this video, I will be going over how to create mixing charts for watercolor. So these mixing charts can be used in my watercolor course, so you can use them for additional colors that you might add to your paint box. If you are creating them for my course, you will need 11 of these charts. You'll be creating 50 boxes, 50 rectangles, 10 boxes across the top, and 5 rows along the side. This will give you 50 mixing boxes for you to explore your colors, mixing your colors together. And then along the top, they are the pure mixes. Along the lower ones, those will be your mixes with a little bit of water added to each mix progressively. Okay, let's talk about our supplies. Here we have my supplies. This first item here is a 12-inch T-square, very affordable. I actually got mine online and it works well. Then I have a soft kneaded eraser that works well on watercolor paper and a mechanical pencil. I like using mechanical pencils. I can keep them sharp. And my paper here, I get this at a big, well-known box store, and it's a 9 by 12. It's actually very affordable, and it's really a good paper, especially for something like this. Not sure if I'd use it on professional work that I'm planning on selling. So tear out a piece of paper here. I just want to point out there's a sticky side, and which is where it was bound in the pad, and then there's a smooth side. I work from the smooth side. It seems to, then I'm not fighting that stickiness so much. So I'm going to come down from the top 1 1/4 inches because I want to allow space there for my title. I'm going to go from the non-sticky side. I'm going to make a mark at 1 1/4 inches from the top of my paper. I'm going to take my T-square, just hold it up to that edge, and I'm going to draw a light line 1 1/4 inches down, keeping my line really light there. That is where I'm going to start my boxes. Now along that light line, I'm going to be making some tick marks. That's where my boxes are going to be. This image here indicates the tick marks, the measurements where the tick marks are going to be. This is just to give you an idea of where I'm going with this. The first mark along that line will be at 1/2 inch. Each box will be 7/8 of an inch wide. Don't worry, I'm going to give you each one of those measurements so you can just go along and make your marks. The next mark you'll make is at 1 3/8 inch from the edge. Then draw a line to join those 2 points. That is the top of our first box. Now the next mark you'll make is at 1 5/8 inch. That's going to begin your next box. You'll probably notice that there is a 1/4 inch between each box. So 1 5/8 inch, and then 2 1/2 inches, which creates your second box. I draw a line to connect those 2 points to create that second box. Here we'll hop another 1/4 inch at 2 3/4, and then another mark at 3 5/8, which creates the top of our third box. and join that top together. You will continue this process down the line with the measurements that are provided here. I also have a guide that I will be sending out. It's a guide that you can print out and just go through it step by step at your leisure rather than trying to follow along with this video. So this should give you an idea of what your first line should be. And again, this is the top of the first row of our mixing boxes, and it sets the scale and size of our next rows. Just erasing just a little bit in between just so I can get a visual of my boxes there. Okay, so now I'm going to make my vertical lines, the lines that obviously go up and down. I'm going to start there at the first tick mark, which was 1/2 inch in, and just work my way down. These are the sides of our mixing boxes. These lines indicate the sides of our mixing boxes. With these first ones, I'm just going to demonstrate going completely across the paper. You certainly don't have to do that. You can just start at the tick marks on the line, because the top of our paper, we're going to erase all those lines off the top because that's going to be our title section of our mixing chart. If you find it easier to draw from one end to the other, that's okay. Or you can just, like I'm doing here, just start at that tick mark and go all the way down to the bottom. Here I'm saying the bottom, the way I'm holding my paper, I'm holding it sideways. Speed it up here so we can get to the end of our paper. Okay, there is our vertical lines. And what we're going to do now is we're going to create the marks that are going to be for our horizontal lines that'll indicate the rest of the top and the bottom of our mixing boxes. So I'm going to line it up with that 1/2 inch mark there and just look down. And so we know that we come down from the top 1.25 inches, and then the bottom of that first box is actually the mark will be 2.5. So there's our first mark along for our horizontal lines, 2.5. And then there's going to be 1/4 inch between each of the boxes going down, so I'm going to go down and make a mark at 2 3/4. So there's the side of our first box. Then here we're at the second box, which is at 4 inches, and then 4 1/4. So just following that vertical line down, and we're going to come down at 5.5, and then 5 3/4, and then down to, we're going to go down to, if we go 7/8, which is how tall the boxes are, then we're going to come down to the 7 inch mark, and then 7 1/4, and then coming down to 8.5. That will be the mark that's at the bottom of our boxes. Again, you will get a copy of this written guide that you can print off that has all of the measurements on it, just to make it easier for you. So here we have our marks for our horizontal lines. We're going to be drawing across those lines to create our little vertical mixing boxes. Again, I lay my T-square along that edge and I begin drawing my vertical lines across at each one of the marks, each one of the tick marks, just following down the paper, lining up those tick marks. There we have our lines all drawn out, and now I'm just going to clean up all these extra graphite lines. You don't have to erase all the lines. I just like nice clean charts. So with my big eraser, I'm just going to erase the top area and the sides, and then I'll switch to a thin pencil eraser to get between the squares, between the rectangles. I mean, you can use a big eraser like this, like use the corner, but it's a little bit, I don't know, clunky, too big. I'm going to switch to a pencil eraser here once I get all the big areas done. And so my lines, I might add, are fairly light. I'm not, just because I don't want to deposit a lot of graphite to get too mixed in with my watercolor when I'm doing all my charts, and makes it just a little bit cleaner, easier to use, easier to actually judge those mixes too. And I can lighten, clean up some of those tick marks at the top and on the sides too, just to clean it up. So I'm going to switch to a pencil eraser here to get in between those lines. Now it seems like this is a very long, tedious process. You're going to be doing 11 of them, but you will get faster doing them. It's good to use a drafting brush or even a chip brush to get the crumbs off rather than using your hands. You do have oils in your hands that if you get those oil marks just in the right place, it can create kind of a resist. So I try to clean off my eraser marks with my graphite brush, dusting brush, drafting brush. So as I've stated earlier, the top of your chart, you will title it, and you'll also, along the top of your boxes, you'll list the pigments. There, you can list the 2 pigments that you're mixing, or if it's your pure palette chart, you'll just list the name of the pigment. And the boxes on the top row will be your most intense mixes, and then you just add a little bit of water, and it gets lighter and lighter as you progress down your chart.